Welcome to another Lazy Shell tutorial video. Today's topic is the Dialogues editor. This editor lets you edit the dialogues that display in the overworld when the characters are talking, and the messages and dialogues that pop up in battle. You can also edit the fonts used, and edit the appearances of dialogue boxes. Here on the left side we have the main dialogue editor. Here's where you edit all of the things that different characters say, messages that pop up when you find items, the location names that pop up for inns, shops, etc. This top box gives you a preview of what the dialogue will look like in-game. Dialogues are typically called into the game using event commands. In event commands, you can edit the particulars of the dialogue box, such as if you want the paper background to be there or not, if you want it to take up one line instead of three, etc. Right below that, the editor kindly tells you how much free space you have for characters. This is handy to plan out your writing. Regarding this Synchronize Duplicates button, some dialogues are duplicated within the game's memory. For example, Dialogue 18 has this dialogue related to Valentina. Dialogues 19 through 35 are duplicates of 18. You can tell if a dialogue is a duplicate because the window to edit the text will turn yellow and you can't edit anything. If you edit Dialogue 18, also edit Dialogues 19 through 35. You can unselect this Synchronize Duplicates button to make it so editing the original doesn't change the duplicates. However, this doesn't give you the option to edit the duplicates separately. So if you're thinking that unsynchronizing the duplicates will get you more dialogues to edit, you're out of luck. Plus, the fact that these duplicates are, well, duplicates of each other means that the text only has to be written once. And then duplicates all just reference that text that already exists. In other words, you actually have more space to work with by keeping the dialogues synced. So all things considered, I recommend leaving this button alone. These page forward and backward buttons let you preview the different pages of a dialogue, if that dialogue spans multiple pages. Within the dialogues, there are commands for things like new lines, new pages, to add in dialogue choices for the player, etc. You can see those commands in brackets. You can use this button to toggle between showing these commands as numbers or as words. If you know the command you want to use, you can just enter it in manually by typing it, or by choosing that command over on this right panel. Let's talk about these commands. First is new line. Dialogues in this game work sort of like a typewriter. If you run out of space on a line, you need this command to tell the game to jump down to the next line. Otherwise, it will try to put all of the text on one line. New line, wait for input. This works like the new line command, except it waits for the player to press the A button before continuing on. New page. Anything after this command will be on a fresh new page. New page, wait for input. Like the other new page command, but waits for the player to press the A button before continuing on. You'll see this command used far more often than the other new page command. The reason being, if you do a new page without the player's input, the player might not have had enough time to read what was on the old page. End string. This ends the current dialogue. Anything written after this command will be ignored. End string, wait for input. Just like the last command, except it waits for the player to press the button before ending. Again, you'll often see this command used in favor of the other end string command. An important note, dialogues have to have an end, otherwise they might not work properly. Thankfully, if you don't include an end command in your dialogues, Lazy Shell will add them for you when you go to save. Option triangle. Used for those dialogues where the player has to choose something. As for what happens when you make a choice, that is determined by the event script the dialogue is in. Pause 1 second. The text for dialogues is automatically placed on the screen at a certain rate. This command puts a brief pause on that. Pause, wait for input. This pauses the current dialogue until the player presses the A button. This command down here is another pause command, but instead of 1 second, you can choose how many frames you want the pause to be. Choose the number of frames to pause, then press this icon to add it in. These commands down here let you add text to a dialogue based on different memory values. Dialogues are typically added to the game through event scripts, like I said. Those same event scripts can have commands referencing and changing these memory values. A pretty common one is treasure chests. A chest with an item in it will have a command to store a particular item to memory, along with a dialogue that says, got a whatever item is in this memory. In addition to these commands, you can also add in any text from the font table on the right. Simply right-click a character and choose Insert into Dialogue. Alternatively, if you hover your mouse over a character, the code for that number will show down below. Now that you know a heart is command 36, you can manually enter a 36 in brackets into dialogue to make a heart show up. Keep in mind that you can only add characters from the dialogue font table to dialogues using these methods. To illustrate what I mean, if we choose the menu font table, you'll see some characters are different. There's no way to add a fist, a hammer, shell, etc. to the dialogues without editing the dialogue font table to include these symbols. You may have noticed that this very first dialogue is the inn message that appears when you walk into an inn. In the levels editor, you can choose a message like this to display upon entering an area. However, you can only choose from about the first 100 dialogues for those messages. So when you're editing your own dialogues, you might want to leave the first 100 or so vacant in case you want to use these. An important thing to note is that dialogues are broken up into different groups. 0 through 2047, 2048 through 3071, and then 3072 through 4095. Each group uses its own batch of characters, meaning even if you're running low on characters in one group, you may have more free space to work with in another group. A word of caution: dialogues are unstable. They often become corrupted using this editor through no fault of the user. Some corruptions are worse than others. Sometimes it's a few dialogues that become unusable, sometimes it's hundreds. I recommend editing dialogues only a few at a time. Keep multiple backups. Periodically save and exit out of Lazy Shell completely, and then reload the ROM. The corruptions often won't become visible until you do that. Speaking from experience, it's a terrible feeling to plug along thinking everything's fine, only to play test the ROM and find that the dialogues are all screwed up and you've lost hours of progress. The reality is, if you're making a full-length hack, the question isn't if the dialogues become corrupted, it's when. This is one of those known issues that Yakabom has on his list to try and fix in his version of Lazy Shell, but as of the time of this video, it hasn't been fixed yet. However, because of the way that dialogues are grouped, there is one silver lining. Usually, when dialogues become corrupted, they only become corrupted within one group. Here in the bottom left, we have the compression table. Normally, each individual letter takes up 1 byte of space. If you have words that you use very frequently, you can enter them in the compression table. Anything entered in the compression table takes only 1 character's worth of space when entered into a dialogue. For example, you see that booster is in the compression table. Now watch what happens to how many characters I have left as I type in booster into a dialogue. Notice how as soon as I finished the word booster, my character's left jumped back up. Now, before any of you smart people out there mention it, you will notice that a capital I is in the compression table. You may be thinking, I is only one letter. How is that saving on character space by having it in this compression table? The reason is because this is actually capital I with spaces before and after it. Spaces take up a character space too. Let's skip down to this section down below. This has the dialogues for the different messages that appear in battle, including the stat up bonus messages you get from flowers. Battle dialogues and battle messages work much the same way that regular dialogues do, but a bit simpler. You can see some of the commands used on the right. The flower bonus texts are even easier. There aren't any commands. You just type the words, although the space for them is much more limited. This top bar allows you to edit the graphics, tiles, and palette of the battle dialog bar. This editor uses the same palette editors and tile editors that other editors within LazyShell use. The ins and outs of those are covered in my other videos. In this area, you can edit the appearance of fonts themselves. This drop-down lets you choose which font table you want to edit, and also those triangles that appear in dialogues when it's waiting for player input. Choose a font table, then click on a character, and that character will appear for you to edit on the right. Here in the width box, you can also change how much horizontal space to give to a character. You can edit the character pixel by pixel using these tools on the left. Alternatively, you can replace an entire font table with a brand new font table by pressing this button. From here, you can choose any font that's installed in your system. You can also change the height, which determines how much vertical space the font takes up, and pad, which adds a universal space measured in pixels in between each character as it is displayed on screen. With this auto crop widths option, the widths of the individual characters will automatically be set to the width of the pixel on the far right of the character. That way, each character only takes up the space that it needs. Click on Generate Image, and this new font table will overwrite the old one. Finally, up here, you can edit the graphics and palettes for the digits that appear in battle menus, or when you hurt or heal someone, and also the arrow cursor that appears when you're choosing a target. That covers things in the dialogues editor. If you find these videos helpful or you just want to support the channel, please consider subscribing. As always, if you have any comments or anything you want to see in a future video, feel free to let me know in the comments section and reach out. Thanks, and we'll see you next time.